Aye.
Okay, we're all live.
Yes.
Okay, good morning, Ross.
Good morning.
Thank you for coming this morning, and you're going to give us some public transit information. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, why don't you introduce yourself for the new members of the committee, and you know the new members, Senator Ingalls and Senator Chittenden?
Yes, I've been able to present just one time before, and
Okay.
nice to see everybody this
All
morning.
right, go right ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen if I may, and see if this works. If the host could please allow me to share.
All set.
Okay, and let me know if you can see that.
We can
Not
see
yet.
you.
Does it have the green around it, Ross? The green.
It does.
Delia? Oh, there you
Okay.
go.
It's coming.
Here
It's
we
coming
go.
now.
Got it.
Just took a little bit. Thank you for your patience. Again, my name is Ross McDonald. I'm the Public Transit Program Manager here at VTrans, and today we'll talk a little bit about some of the projects we're working on, some of the challenges, opportunities we're facing, and we'll get right to the numbers. So milestones and noteworthy events. We covered some of these in our initial program overview just a few weeks ago, but certainly it's a busy time for us. The staff in public transit is made of 5 people, myself, 3 public transit coordinators, and a financial administrator. One of those coordinators has been reassigned to the COVID effort and is a contact tracer, and we're able to stay in touch with her efforts, but we are, let's just say, at capacity. But a lot of this is revolving around the COVID response. There's been a lot of changes that we'll talk about in terms of funding that has been made available, and all the responses in terms of safety and service changes as we try to reflect the mobility needs in this ever-changing environment. We just received a federal grant for 100% federal funds for a research demonstration grant award, where we'll be purchasing and testing with with Dartmouth College UV and far UV products for air purifying and certain disinfecting products. So that is underway, and we'll be starting and embarking on that program very soon. We received funds for our bus and bus facilities grant program, and received almost $800,000 for the regular replacements of our vehicles that have met both the mileage thresholds and the year thresholds as they're outlined by the Altoona testing standards, which comes with all of these vehicles that we purchase with FTA funds. We also received about that same amount of money in the Low and No Emissions Grants Award for 4 electric buses. Those will be 2 small cutaways for the Lyndonville, St. Johnsbury area, and 2 in the Bennington area. Once those are delivered, that will make 5 of our 7 providers in possession of or soon to be delivered of vehicles and the charging infrastructure as we try to build the case studies and the assessments necessary to scale up when practical. We have established the Mobility and Transportation Innovation Grant Program, and look forward to presenting those projects and programs maybe in March when we're up and running and seeing where we are with those disparate activities from around the state. As we talked about earlier, we are just in our 2nd month in the microtransit pilot project in Montpelier, and that continues to go pretty well. We also continue our job access, recovery, and Rides to Wellness demand response projects, again, trying to elicit the true needs and demands out there as it relates to wellness, job access, and keeping people in recovery. We continue to build out and scale up the trip planner. Our Go Vermont trip planner shows our fixed route services, carpools, van pools, ADA service areas, flag stop areas, so that you're not being asked to go to a bus stop several miles away if you can flag the bus down in a safe location along the route. And we'll now start revealing and reflecting the microtransit service. We'll continue to work on 2 deliverables in that space, which is trying to open up the empty seats in our demand response services throughout the state. We have 700,000 trips per year on cutaways and in volunteer vehicles. At some point, we would like to be able to open those up when those are scheduled so that other people in communities around the state will be able to speak or book that trip in addition to the E&D demand response or Medicaid trip, and pay a certain fare to bend the cost curve of those demand response services and allow for more value, more trips with those overheads and capacities.
Senator Mazza?
Yes, Senator Berkeley.
Ross, can you explain that? What you mean? Like what is not allowing you to do that now? Like when you say you hope to do it, like what's the barrier?
Sure. Right now, for eligible demand response trips, we're asking people to call an 800 number or their regional provider, determine their eligibility through Medicaid or the Elderly and Persons with Disability Program, Rides to Wellness, Recovery Job Access, where those pilots exist. And then we book that trip. And then we work with volunteers and our regular staff and drivers through a route match dispatch scheduling software. So once we book that trip, let's say in Barton, that is not served by public transit, we then within 24, 48 hours, then go produce that trip. In that 24 and 48 hours, we don't have an effective way to reveal that to the residents in Barton. So if we were in a position where every time we were booking a demand response one-off trip, that we could grab that information and run that through the algorithms that are powering the trip planner, then if somebody was in Barton saying, oh, I'd like to go from Barton to St. Johnsbury, and in the next few days, maybe then we could see, hey, we have this demand response scheduled in 2 days' time, contact us here, pay $5, and we can make that trip and just try to, again, open up those empty seats. Right now, we just don't have a way of broadcasting those opportunities.
It's a software problem, or really, and public outreach and staffing and things.
Exactly. So for right now, we've spoken with Route Match, who was purchased by Uber, about trying to develop that interface. So when we're using their system and putting the origin destination together for that trip, we would like to be able to generate that trip and put over in our trip planner. It's something that could be done, but we're talking proprietary data, going to open source data. And while Route Match has said all the right things, they haven't been very active to get us to that place. So for us, we're at the 5-year term in our contract next fiscal year with Route Match. We expect to go out on the street with a new RFP to see if there's a better software, not only for our demand response services, but one that will be able to speak through or to the open source data so that we would capture those trips.
So I have a question, not so much about the software, but it's around how you allocate costs, because we know the Medicaid and the E&D are funded through federal or Medicaid, state and federal. And so with volunteer drivers, and then they're paid the mileage. So if you had someone who's doing a Medicaid funded transportation and somebody else who is not, I don't know, 30 years old, single, just wants to get to Lyndonville, how are you managing those costs? Would that person get the free ride and Medicaid is paying the full tab? Are you cost allocating? And are there certain volunteer drivers who would like to drive people to medical appointments, but not want to necessarily commit to being available to provide transportation for members of the general public?
Possibly. And those are a lot of the details that we would need to work out with our FTA region. They are aware of our plans and are supportive of learning more. On that allocated cost, we know that that trip will be covered by Medicaid or by our elderly and persons with disability program. With that in place, we were hoping that we could justify a fare of $5, $7, depending on our analyses, and contribute that toward the cost of the Medicaid trip. And so rather than spending, let's say, $75 an hour for a van trip, maybe we could bill Medicaid $70 for that trip rather than $75. We understand that there's a disconnect between, well, if there's 2 members on that Medicaid trip, then it should be allocated 50-50, like we do with our elderly and disabled program and Medicaid. This would be incorporating a general public member, and we're thinking that any way that we could reduce the cost to the Medicaid program could be appreciated and potentially supported through the FTA and DEVA offices. But that is a big hurdle to jump over.
Ross, just a question. Do they ever buy buses and size them according to the demand? I mean, I continue to look at Chittenden County with huge buses, and the most I've ever seen is 4 or 5 people on at one time. Wouldn't it be wiser to have a smaller bus, or is that possible to do? Because you never see a bus that's full in Chittenden County. And I just wondered why we can't get smaller buses.
Sure, I agree with you, Senator Mazza, and we have begun right sizing the fleet for 2 reasons. One, right sizing, well, 3 really. The cost of maintenance on a van with a manual lift is much cheaper than the maintenance on a cutaway or larger vehicle. So there's that. There's also the fact that those drivers for the smaller vehicles don't necessarily need a CDL.
Right.
And with the paucity of CDL drivers that we have in the state, this is an opportunity to get somebody hired driving those non-CDL vehicles while setting up the training to get them to that CDL status. So we are seeing a lot of new Sprinter type, we call them Sprinter vehicles, which are those caravans seating 3 to 4 people with 1 wheelchair rather than those 12 to 17, 19 passengers with the 2 wheelchair. That'll be part of the mix. The issue that we have is a few times a year or a few times a month, one of those vans will be full, and we do need that capacity, or we're running 2 drivers, 2 vehicles, next to each other, or one in front of the other. So there is this building to capacity at peak, and then there's these ongoing operations that don't require that peak capacity. We need to continue to work with our providers to right size that fleet, but that is something that's going on now. I think we bought more than 10, maybe up to 15 Sprinters replacing cutaways just last year.
Oh, good. Because like I said, I continue to see it. Not that we want to cut service, but I just thought getting around the city is so much easier with a smaller bus.
Yeah.
Just traffic wise. And yet you don't see, 6, 7 people, 5, 6. And maybe that's peak times of day. I don't know. But just wondered about the availability of how you purchase them, or if you have to purchase the big ones, or but okay.
When we started, we were cutaway buses, and now we're buying more sedans and Sprinters just to address those things. And they access roads and our backcountry driveways much better than the cutaways as well. We get those stuck going up and down those gravel driveways from time to time. So there's a lot of benefits. I didn't even mention the unit cost being 56, 60,000 rather than the 80,000 plus for the cutaways. All of those things contribute. Those cutaways getting 5 years and 150,000 miles, that's what we can get out of Sprinters. So that's where we are with that. I've been pushing for smaller vehicles where
Electric buses will have a lot less maintenance also, I mean, in the future, right? I mean, because there's not much other than batteries, I guess, and that's what I hear about cars. I don't know about buses, but
Yeah.
there's got to be high maintenance on a diesel bus with all the working parts, where electrics will cut back on that dramatically.
The lube oil filter process is a large percentage of a overall vehicle's maintenance through lifetime. So just getting rid of that 25% off the top and that time could really help, because again, there's a lack of qualified mechanics that we have problems getting as well. So fewer preventive maintenance hours, that could also help us, with that type of capacity limitation that we're seeing around the state.
Do our school buses have to have CDL licenses? I should know that, but I don't.
Don't know.
Okay, just curious. That's all right. I'll ask DMV when they come in, but
I
okay.
think they do.
Really?
The,
Senator,
the only thing is, if you have some of the vans that are used, I think under 16 and passengers, and I think that there's a cutoff on terms of number of passengers below which you don't need a CDL. But that's my understanding, because I think, bus, like everyone else, there's huge shortage and great competition for.
you can't find CDL drivers
no,
anywhere.
no. Much less who want to transport a busload of kids, huh?
Well, 16 and under is the transit rule as well for non-CDL drivers. So if that's the case for school bus driving, I would not be surprised.
I don't know. We'll have to. I'm sure Wander
DMV
would know.
DMV will be
Commissioner
on next.
Manoli will know.
Senator Ingalls?
Yeah, Ross, and maybe you'll cover it later, and if you are, that's fine, and I'll wait to listen. Is there a cost share in these communities where you have established routes, at very established routes, not the specialized services that you're talking about, but just something that's got a schedule, and that's what you've been there, and the communities to help pay for some of that?
Sure. So, Senator, we have a general policy goal of our public transit entities, the 7 that are around the state, to have or to reach a 20% local match share. And that is for everything from the match on capital to supporting the demand response services to supporting the fixed route services as well. So those funds are derived or received through town meeting day, requests mostly. In Chittenden County, they are an authority and they have taxation authority, and those assessor towns, pay directly through their taxes for that local support. Outside of that, in our 5311 rural area, we're largely dependent on going to these towns and demonstrating the value to their communities and asking for that calculated share to assist in helping us bring mobility through their towns.
What a great service that is to have in a community, and I would think that any community that would have that service would be. Of course, nobody gets in line to pay more taxes, but what a great service that's provided. And I would think that the amount of business that gets helped with the transporting these folks to do their business, that they would be more eager to step up and help out.
In the Northeast Kingdom, the former director, Mary Grant, was very, this was a priority to get financial support from the member towns. And I think that in this region, the report of the support through town budgets has been pretty good. It's not like you have the authority that they have in Chittenden County to do it, but I think that was always a priority of hers to get it on the town warning. And I think as a region, the Northeast Kingdom has done a good job in terms of that public support.
I don't have it in Colchester. Can you imagine that? larger
You know-
community as it is.
Everybody talks about the western side of the state gets everything. And Senator Mazza, you don't have it in Colchester.
No,
You don't get any projects. You don't have a park and ride.
I know,
mean,
that's right. Come on. You know, what's wrong with this picture? You know what I mean?
uh,
Senator Chittenden, you're a big supporter of public transit. I'm sure you're on the board, aren't you there?
I was until last January, but I always think fondly of it. And this is a very important point. So thank you for raising it, Senator Ingalls. And I agree with everything Ross stated. I just want to add some clarity. When you said Chittenden County, it's not the entire county. It's just some of the municipalities. So, for example, Colchester has been contributing, but they're not assessed. They don't get a bill from the community that they have to pay. So it's always a negotiation. And in my service on the board for 5 years, it was always a challenge to work with all of these really small communities because new characters would come on the select boards and they would always look to try to keep their tax rate down. And one of the first things they'd like to cut is a graduated rate to reach that 20% match. So it is no small chore for Green Mountain Transit, which has only limited amount of attention to collect these revenues from all of the municipalities that benefit from the service that we want to expand. I just want to bring back something I raised previously, and I know Ross is aware of this, and I'd love to hear his thoughts on it. It's something New Hampshire has done, and I think it makes a lot of sense for us to consider. For communities that benefit from public transportation or should benefit from it, I'd love to see an assessment for public transportation when they register a single occupancy vehicle. And I'd love for communities like South Burlington, already paying $26 per man, woman, and child, to have those waived when they register a single occupancy vehicle in their town, which they've already paid the fee. So I'd love to find a state managed way similar to what New Hampshire has done to collect the revenues from those communities that need public transportation, circumventing the reliance on all of the select boards in the small communities. If we truly want to increase public transportation, I think a funding net stream that other states have used could do that in a fair, equitable, and rational manner. But Ross, does that make any sense what I just put on the table? And do you have any comments on it?
It does make sense. And when we compare Vermont to other states like New Hampshire, it's important to know that in Vermont, we have a much larger budget than states like Maine and New Hampshire. New Hampshire may put in $200,000 in state funds to support their transit services. We put in about $8 million. We flex from FHWA and on a regular non-COVID year up to $18 million, $19 million will be captured in the budget for that transfer. New Hampshire doesn't do either of those items. So there's a big hole. They're trying to fill in their limited transit service through that funding mechanism. For us, we are seeing more experiences like the Mary Grant approach, which is when we have our community boards working with the towns on a revolving basis, 5 towns a year or 10 towns a year to communicate the updates, share the value of allowing their residents to age in place, job access, connecting to essential services. We haven't found a huge issue with deriving those local funds. It also allows the provider to have those ongoing conversations with the communities they serve. So there is some value there as well. In terms of another way to fund an expanded transit program, I would just certainly defer to Michelle and our managers to talk about additional revenues. But for us, through FY22, we're in our budget is in pretty good shape. I would be concerned about assessing towns without that ongoing communication that is required at this point. But there's a lot of ways to consider those local revenues.
I would just one follow-up, if I may, Chair Mazza.
Go ahead.
So if we were to pursue an alternative assessment method, that wouldn't stop the communication. In fact, I think it'd free up more of GMTs and the providers' resources to have those richer conversations rather than focusing on the haggling of how much they need to get from that select board. So I don't disagree with anything you just said, Ross. I just think if we have a fair and consistent methodology that is rational and comparable to what other states have done to fund public transportation, those communications I think will be richer and more productive to meet the needs of each of these communities being served.
Thank you, Senator.
I think we should give Burlington the burden of paying for public transit, and if they want the airport, they should take the public transit too.
Second.
Okay, go right ahead.
Thank you. So of course, we're looking at a bunch of opportunities. We have better IT tools and products, better information for our passengers. We do have improved service and route planning tools that are associated with that automated vehicle location service that we have that is tracking the real-time movement of our vehicles. It also compares that to scheduled stop alignment, as well as time points in terms of running hot or being behind schedule. So that's allowed us to make some tweaks to the schedule to better reflect the actual service that is that's on the road. We continue to grow the transit network of advocates. That really is sitting on the intervention, treatment, and recovery committee, working with AHS, looking at these different transportation demand management programs that we've just awarded, and working with towns like Ludlow and organizations like the Energy Action Network. Again, there's a lot of benefit to employers, to the environmental concerns, to healthcare providers. And we just want to ensure that those folks are aware of our efforts and that they're helping us where they can. The interagency coordination I just spoke of, AHS and VTrans are splitting the local match on one of our pilots as we serve many of the same clients, and we have great relations with those folks. We were part of a lean program looking at all the transportation that is being paid for at AHS and our public transit program. Once COVID hit, those resources were redirected, but we're ready to snap back into that line of communication and coordination when ready. Our community rides program is just very quickly trying to work with communities to provide additional mobility services. Is it trying to get more volunteers, introducing a microtransit pilot for a few days a week for several hours during those days? Is it working with schools to help produce some CDL drivers? All of those things are part of this community rides effort that we've started through the Go Vermont program just a few years ago. Next month, this month, we have an intercity RFP due out that will continue to look to for how best to serve the Burlington to Albany, New York corridor, and also see where we are going to be with Greyhound as we continue to subsidize their service from the White River Junction or Boston to Montreal service. We mentioned the electrification plan, and that went out on the street last week. We're just looking for a partner to help us organize the costs, the risks, the benefits, and the funding scenarios that would be necessary for us to transition over a period of time to an electric fleet. The challenges are the ones that you are very aware of in many of your conversations. Our aging population, the land use patterns are keeping us out in the hinterlands generally. We know that mobility gaps are persistent, and they're continually cited when we do visit our communities. So always cited as a primary barrier to job access and the like. There has been the disruptive nature of the pandemic on our services, and we'll need to not only address the services that are necessary now and expand access to vaccinations, driving nurses around who can provide the vaccinations to those high-risk folks, as well as being in a position to rebuild and take a fresh look at our services and to see, is commuting going to be down for job access by a percentage point for the foreseeable future as we've all gotten used to working from home? What's that going to do to our overall route needs? That's going to be a challenge, of course. And the ridership losses could persist. As I said, we've found other ways to get what we need. We'll see how long it takes to build back up to that 5 million trips. As you can see here on the ridership, we were due to be at just over 5 million, but in all actuality, we're at 4.1 million, the largest decrease in my 14 years with the public transit shop. all COVID related. So the budget, and for first time folks, the category and general line items are to the left, and the columns are the different funding categories. We show state funds, the FTA formula, which is the programmatic funds that we get as a percentage of our population and those considerations. The FTA competitive column is the awards that we receive from our grants. COVID funds is new this year, and I'll be talking a little bit about that. Those COVID funds that are entered into this budget have largely come from that STP CMAQ Flex. That's the FHWA Flex that we talk about, that we're so proud of, working with FHWA to build a more robust transit system. Years past, again, that was $19 million. Looking at FY22, we're looking at a reduction to around 8 million. Using those COVID CARES Act and CRISA funds, we're able to fund that COVID fund column at 100% federal. That saves about maybe you can see my cursor here, saves about 4.7 million in state funds. It should save about 3 million in local funds, as those funds will not be needed to match our admin, our maintenance, our operations, and our CMAQ expansion routes as well. So that is where we'll be applying a lot of this 100% money. We're going to be saving a lot of money for state funds, local funds, as well as from our FHWA program for this 1 year coming up to hopefully help other programs do more in their shops as well. Down below, you see this $3 million. That's a direct flex when people ask, how do we use monies to help the urban system? We grant out from our budget anywhere from $8 to $10 million for the urban system, and 3 million of that is a direct transfer from our FHWA program to the 5307 urban program. It's deposited right in their FTA accounting system account. So that continues in FY22 as well. So as you can see, bottom right, we're looking at a 14% increase total, which is the largest increase I've seen, certainly. But I'd like to take a step back and look at just the planning, the CMAQ routes, which are new starts or routes that had started in FY2012, which allow us to continue to pay for those routes rather at 80-20 rather than at a 50-50 match, 80% federal, 20% local. So when we look at the differences in these core non-competitive, non-capital areas, we are looking at a level funding for FY22 for 2 reasons. One, we have reduced our overall operational hours, as some routes have been combined, some routes have a certain frequency reduced because of the lack of ridership, and we expect that to continue into FY22, as well as we're trying to stay flexible. I'm going to go into the COVID funds and our relief funds and where that leaves us, but we're trying to just maintain the system as best we can, using these funds for one-time benefits for state, for local, for our FHWA Flex, as well as withholding a certain amount of money to take advantage of opportunities like microtransit pilots or other demand response opportunities. So this is just really showing that even though there's a 14% increase on the books on our day-to-day operations and management administration, it's going to be very similar to where it was in FY21.
Yeah, I'm thinking about maybe 15 packages. Yeah, that's good.
So when we look at COVID relief funds, we had 2 shots of 100% monies. In the spring, we received $13.352 million. And we were able to retroactively use that from January 15th, I believe. We started in February 1 to the end of last fiscal year, and we covered all of the operations, moving 50-50 splits to 100% federal, saving state and local monies. And we are due to expend roughly 12 million of that 13.3 through FY21. Again, just leaving a little bit of money to react if necessary. And we have been reacting. The most recent funds that we received are the CRISA funds. We received the 26.725 million from that relief effort. That allows us to cover all of our ops, our admin, our maintenance, our demand response program, not the Medicaid, but our own 5311 demand response program, and the CMAQ routes for all of FY22 as projected. What that does is that's going to save us that $4 million in state funds, $3 million in local, and reduce the FHWA flex there. That gets us through FY22, and we're projecting a $2.4 million balance in those 100% funds to start FY23 with. We know that we have the Berlin facility that is due to move once we find an alternative site. We have other capital projects in Rutland that we want to address, and we'll continue to work with our providers to gauge their needs in terms of the rolling stock and facilities and operating needs. That's
Could I,
Yes,
Ross, I'm sorry to interrupt. CRISA, keeping all these federal, the CARES Act, you're talking about the first legislation that was passed back in May or June.
correct.
And then there's the newest one that was passed in December. So CARES is the earlier one. CRISA is what? Is that the latest one?
That is the latest one that we were just awarded and announced a few weeks ago. And you can imagine taking the budget that we've been working with Lenny and considering what we could do with those funds with Michelle, Costa, Lenny and his team. We found that what we could do is reduce a lot of this, move it over to the COVID funds, which is a combination of CARES and CRISA, and reduce the state and local funds associated. Now, those local funds could still be used if we are going to grow and expand the capital program as we plan. When we talked about using CARES Act funds and in the future CRISA funds, that means that we aren't obligating a lot of the formula funds. And so we will have about $6 million rather than our 3.5 because of the capital and the activities we're able to push into the 100% funding. Same with our operations, where generally speaking, we use all of our formula funds for operations because we can't use flex funds for operations at that 50-50 level. Only CMAQ can pay for operations under certain requirements. And so for us, this will allow us to do all of these things, maintain our system, and take advantage of some of these one-time opportunities to fit up our fleet and to invest in some of our facilities.
Okay, anything else? That's it?
And that's it.
Any questions at this time? Senator Ingalls?
Ross, back to the Greyhound, do we expect at any ever again to see Greyhound in the northern part of the state, whether it be up in the just past the central part of the state?
I don't know, Senator. Greyhound has been very aggressive in their attempts to participate in receiving some of these COVID relief funds. The CARES Act funds, that 13.32, did come with the requirement to use 15% of those funds for intercity. We have 2 intercity providers in the state, Greyhound, that we provide support to, Greyhound and Premier Coach. Premier Coach is doing a really great job up and down Route 7 corridor. Greyhound, we're able to use some of their miles that they are not subsidized for to apply for in-kind service against that 50-50 match. Now, Greyhound is having significant issues. They're looking for federal assistance rather than going to every state, one by one. But right now, our priority will be when we're able to restart our intercity Amtrak service. We will restart the Greyhound intercity service. Right now, we're continuing to provide service or assistance to Greyhound and Premier, even though those services are not up and running. It is part of the vision and the purpose of these CARES Act funds, which was to keep businesses open, to keep people employed and off our unemployment rolls. That continues through June 30th, and we're hoping soon thereafter we'll be able to restart intercity service. At that time, and when we go through that RFP process I mentioned earlier, we'll see if they have other ideas in terms of serving other areas in the state. But right now, we don't have anything planned in additional intercity service.
Okay. Yes, go right ahead.
It's just a large swath of area up there. I especially up in my district, Senator Kitchell's district, to see, we have no rail up there, no passenger rail. Thank God we have the efforts of what the state's trying to do. But when you're looking up there for somebody who's just less able to travel to any type of distance, it's a big void up there. And I guess I just didn't realize that until I looked at the map. And then while you were discussing that, I pulled up the Greyhound sites, and it's just a big swath of area that unfortunately that people aren't traveling anywhere out of unless there's a family connection or the state can get them there someplace.
My predecessor, Barbara Donovan, always thought that the next intercity service should be the Newport to White River Junction run. So that once you get to White River Junction, Lebanon, then you can get to Concord Coach and Dartmouth Coach and other Greyhound infrastructure routes that can get you anywhere you'd like to go. That's tough. I know that they did that 15, 20 years ago, and it just didn't generate the ridership. But that could be the next gap that's being addressed in our intercity plans.
Okay, gotta move on. Anything else? All right. Thank you very much, Ross. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Department of Motor Vehicles and Wanda Manoli. And as soon as we get our screen clear, we'll get started.
Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioner. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. And so very pleased to finally be in front of the Senate Transportation Committee.
We got about 130 questions, so it's
Yeah,
So
The first question for
we-
you, Wanda. Wanda, our first question for you is, what is the cutoff where you need a CDL? Is it 16 passengers?
on buses.
So you need a CDL for bus drivers, less than 16 passengers. You need to have the Vermont endorsement. 16 and over, you need to have the federal endorsement. We administered both of those tests.
Is there a differentiation between transporting school kids versus other passengers? Or does that apply right across the board?
I did, because I knew the committee was going to have so many great questions about operations. I did extend the invite to Director Smith. It's transportation, transporting passengers. I don't think it distinguishes between the age of those passengers. Correct, Mike?
Correct. It's school kids, people enrolled in school. So, and your numbers were correct. It's 15 or more, so 16 for the large CDL one, and 15 or less, or 14 or less for the type 2.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
And Wanda, why don't you start with your budget, and we'll have your overview, and then we'll run into questions from time to time.
Thank you for this opportunity. Just a little side comment I want to share with you. I look at the State House every day, and I want you to know that the Senate Transportation Committee room boarded up. I think you have different color window something's in there, so I just
We were
want you
able
to know
wave
you're
to
well
one another from
protected.
our room. Yeah, we were able to wave to one another. And,
Yes. So I have with me today, I have Director Terry Blaisdell, who is oversees my finance division. And I also have Director Smith with me today, who is prepared if you want to get into any details on the operational side. Our budget overview is 5 slides. We will be thorough but fairly quick with this presentation, and then allow you time to ask us questions.
Wanda, you know our newest members, Senator Ingalls from Essex Orleans and Senator Chittenden from Chittenden.
Welcome. I haven't had an opportunity to meet you in a previous Zoom, but I think you have not met Director Smith. Mike Smith is the Director of Operations. He has been with DMV for 30 years, a little bit over 30 years. And Terry Blaisdell has been with state government for about a little over 28 years, around 28 years, and has a very broad background in finance.
If you're upset with anything, call Mike Smith. He'll make you more upset. I mean, no, he'll take care of it. Thank you.
Great. So Liz, if you would go to the next slide, that would be wonderful. I'm going to have Terry go over the details in this. I'll do some highlights for you, but we like to present to you what you budgeted last year versus our actual spending in FY21. This is a summary of the categories that we budget in and where our current spend is at. Terry?
Thank you, Commissioner. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. And for the record, I'm Terry Blaisdell. I'm the Director of Finance and Logistics for the Department of Motor Vehicles. So this first slide is a snapshot as of December 31st of 2020 of where our actual spending for the FY21 budget is at that point in time. And I know there's a lot of numbers to look at, but if you look at the very bottom line, the totals line, you'll see we're 49% spent. And that's really where we want to be right now. This is 6 months into the fiscal year. We're at the halfway point, so we would expect to see somewhere around 50%. You'll also see some fluctuation in that column. Such as the IT telecommunications line, we're only showing 16% spent there. We have a lot of one-time allocations that are budgeted in that line item that haven't come through yet. We haven't paid those expenses. And for example, the third line down, contract and third-party services, you'll see we're 74% spent. So there we've paid the bulk of our line items for this year already. So I have reviewed each of those lines. I'm very comfortable where we are and very confident that we're going to finish the year right on target.
Okay.
So are there any questions?
No, go right ahead.
Okay, so Liz, the next slide, please. We like to include this slide, and I think it really helps new members. And as you know, in the agency PowerPoint budget presentation, there's a slide that is similar to this, and it references the 600 million and how it's divided up. In the slide, what we are presenting to you is of the 300 million plus dollars that we collect annually. We are just showing you where those funds are coming from that contribute to the transportation slide. Terry?
Yep. So you'll see at the bottom, we have 341 million that we're expecting to bring in FY22. That's the latest number from the January 2021 Economic Review and Revenue Forecast update. So and that is updated from the August projection. And I thought I had that in front of me. We had originally projected 328 million. So you will see that we are seeing additional revenue, which is really good news.
Which revenues are up and which are down? The purchase and use must be up and probably
Yes.
gasoline down.
Yes, I don't have the actual breakout in front of me. I can look at that and get that to you, but you did
Sure.
ask about purchase and use a couple weeks ago when we presented,
yep.
and that one is up. And I believe that data on a month-by-month basis was sent over. I don't know if you had a chance to take a look at
That's
that.
it's amazing how much people are buying cars.
Yes, yes.
And,
In fact, it's
this time, and yet I'm sure gasoline because no one's traveling back and forth to work, and
yes.
but they're buying vehicles. No doubt about that.
Yeah, and if you look at that month over month, it was really the last 3 months of the calendar
Right.
year
That's
where they were really up. So yeah, that was very interesting data to look at.
Okay.
But I can take a look and do some quick analysis
All right,
about
great.
the other items and get
Fine.
that to you.
Other questions from the members on the slide? Next slide, Liz, please. So this is a summary of the governor's recommended budget for the Vermont DMV for FY22, which I will have Terry walk you through the details. And I think as this committee knows and members, the DMV budget is pretty much 2/3 or a little bit more focused on the salary and wages, the personal services of our budget in our budget. And then there's some operating expenditures to do business. So Terry will walk you through the highlights of this. And then our last slide, we will show you the specifics on where our budget request is being applied.
Thank you. So we are asking for a total of 36 million, and that is an increase of 1.6 million and 4.7% over the reinstated FY21 budget. And again, the DMV budget, it's really an essential maintenance budget to help ensure the continuation of services and operations in our open branch locations. And about 2/3, maybe a little bit higher than that, is personal services. So that's our salary and our benefits and any personal services contracts that we hold with various vendors. And we'll get into that detail in the next slide. But in the last third of this budget is really operating. It's our forms, it's our license plates, it's our postage, our printing, our banking fees. So again, it's really a maintenance budget that helps operate the DMV location. And just to get into the high level detail here, so we have a 1.6 million increase, and of that, it's largely salary and benefits. And I'm sure there's a common theme this year in increased retirement costs. So the retirement rate impact is heavy. And that's allocated to DMV as it is to all departments. We also are seeing increased costs in mail processing and banking services. Some of this is COVID related, but the majority is just the way we're doing business these days. We're driving more and more people to do online services, to access the internet, to renew online, and there's a cost for doing that business. So the banking costs, our vendors extend that banking fee to us. A few years ago, we did extend that cost back to the customer, but that changed in legislation about 3 years ago for DMV to absorb those costs and not the customers. We are continuing to see that trend go up, which is what we would expect when we are encouraging the online services. And in addition, even though these online services are available to the customers, it's not seamless at DMV. So our behind the scenes systems have not changed. We are still using, the antiquated core system database. So every time there's an online renewal, that same amount of work has to happen behind the scenes at DMV with the staff. So at this point, we're not seeing any cost savings on the back end, but it is, we're presenting efficiency to our customers to be able to do that online. And as we realized in a COVID world, that's very, very important. and we are continuing to see that go up.
So,
Yes.
Yeah, I have a question. Obviously, these costs are being, which are just the cost of providing the services, is going up by 1.6 million. And that would obviously be paid out of the large part out of the transportation fund. This gets to the question because we historically have used DMV and the concept that the functions are supported by the users of the service. And I think this might be the second year that we do not have our routine proposed inflationary increases on our DMV fees. Maybe Wanda, you can answer that question, but obviously we're absorbing the additional costs of providing the service because staff are getting increases, operating costs, mailing, all the things that you've outlined are costing more to provide the service to the user population. So and we had a lot of conversation about the need to keep the fees updated on a routine basis. We found some that were not done in 20 years. And that way it doesn't create, when they're done, such a large increase. They're much more moderate if they're done on a predictable basis. So is this the second year? In other words, will it be almost over 2 years since the fees have been adjusted?
So as I understood it, it's every 3 years, and last year would have been the year that a fee bill for DMV could have been presented.
Okay, so this is the second year. Last year,
Yep.
and the revenues attached to those fees, which not only support the operation of DMV, but also our transportation infrastructure was about 7 million.
I believe that number is correct. Mike, you worked on that number. I think it was about 7 million, maybe a closer to 8.
Okay.
I believe you're correct, but I don't have the exact number now.
Okay. Well, it's hard.
And one other point, Senator Kitchell, it was prior to me joining this organization, but you did invest several years back to apply the CPI across all of the fees so you could bring them up to date, because there was a point in time where you were just adjusting certain fees, and then there was a large gap in other areas. So that is the practice as I understand it. The CPI gets applied across every fee that we oversee. Correct, Mike?
Correct.
All right. Well, I just want to bring it up for committee members because it is a conscious decision to postpone that scheduled update of fees, and so that revenue or those higher costs of operation then get picked up by the overall T fund. And I would say that some of us weren't. I'll say I was not aware that we were only doing updates on certain funds. That's when we found out. Senator Mazza, remember the mobile homes?
Yeah.
They hadn't been changed, I don't think, for years, and it was such a ridiculously.
They were registering those motorhomes for like under $100. You know, they were just.
Yeah, it was a very, very modest fee, and so that's when we said we didn't know that we were only doing it for certain fees, and some had gone without being updated for years, and that's why we put in the language you're citing. So I just want to bring that up to the committee's attention that that we had looked at that and put together that methodology, and so this is this is, as I understand that, there is no proposal to do any adjustment of fees for the CPI. And so this would be the second year. So that if we wait and do it a third year, we're probably going to almost double the impact whenever whoever is around to deal with that fee.
And can I just confirm on that?
Yes, Senator Pertlick.
What DMV just said, that the CPI gets automatically adjusted, or when we adjust it to the CPI. And I think it'd be more than the second year, because I don't remember doing it since I've been here. So maybe it's the second biennium.
Director
Well,
Smith?
The 3 years would have been up last year, Andy. So it would have been the year before you came in that we did it.
Right. Okay.
So they were due last year if we adhered to that cycle and use the CPI as a basis for the increase.
So it's not automatically, none of them are automatically.
No, but that's the methodology to establish the increase on the fee.
Okay, right. Okay.
Okay. Any other questions?
So, Terry, if you just want to highlight, or I'll highlight the $500,000 request in our budget. This is to continue to enhance customer services using our partners with NIC, which was known as VIC. For the new members, it was the Vermont Information Consortium. It is, they manage all of the state's home pages. They work with all of the departments to create customer portals in order to do business. Working with Director Smith to continue in the method that we are, especially during COVID, we've identified some other services that we're providing now on the portal to Vermonters, or some services that we want to enhance. So the $500,000 is to continue doing our work with them. They either charge us a set fee to develop the system that we want to put in place on the DMV Express site, or they come up with a cost that is per transaction. And Mike, if you could just highlight a couple of the service improvements that you really would like to invest in to support your team's work, that would be great.
Yep. So I've already spoke, but for the record, Mike Smith, Director of Operations. So the most notable one, and I think the one that's going to be the most used, will be a tax evaluation. Right now, one of the biggest reasons that we return transactions is purchase price on private sales and NADA values, which we're required to assess the tax on. They don't align, and then we end up writing back to the customer. So by utilizing the website to create an application where customers can not only fill out their application and pre-populate it, which makes it a whole lot more readable, but it will also interact with the NADA site to give them the value of the vehicle. So conceptually, the transaction would not have to be rejected and would pass through faster. Some other smaller ones that are, I say smaller, but there's still benefits. Currently right now on DMV Express, you can renew your registration, you can get a duplicate registration, and you can change your address. They have our registration file, so we're looking for them to be able to add in the ability to purchase replacement plates. Because one of the things we want to make sure is the plate's valid when we replace it. So they have the data, so that should be relatively easy to move in there. Collection of information in regards to vanity plates. That should be relatively easy for a customer to make their selections, have that interact with us, collect the fee, and move that on. Duplicate title applications, much the same way. The data is available, and it's something that is there, and it's something that customers would like to be able to do versus trying to mail us a document. There's some smaller ones in regards to, being able to create a website where you can enter a VIN number and find out if the title has been produced, and for lien holders, whether they've been added as a lien holder, because that is one of the issues that we've experienced through the COVID outbreak, is that, we got behind in registrations, we cleaned that up, and the next area to get behind is title mailing. So dealers, lien holders are all interested in where's my title? And this would be an easier way for them to access it. And there's a whole long list that goes along with that and other services that I won't get into, but those are the highlights.
Okay,
So, thank you. And if there's no questions, I think Terry could do a really brief overview of the IT projects and ongoing maintenance and in our budget. And then I'd like to take us to the crosswalk so we can spend a little bit of time there.
okay.
Thank you, Commissioner. So our IT project budget is down this year. We did successfully complete the new commercial vehicle operations system, the rollout of that system in May of 2020. So that project is done. We're just going to be paying for the ongoing maintenance. And then the project slated for FY22 is the new automated testing system. So that we currently have a contract in place that's expiring. So that will be going out and redoing that program. And that's scheduled for implementation, I believe, in the fall of 2021. And then.
So if no questions, we can go to the next slide.
So I apologize for the really small print on this one.
I know.
I am happy to print them larger, and we could get those out to you if that's if that would be preferable. I know we did do that last year. We hand carried them over.
Thank you for enlarging that, Liz. It did help.
Thank you. Yes. So this is our crosswalk, and I'm not sure if you recall last year. Last year was my first year doing the budget for DMV, and I kind of tweaked some categories and put them switch some line items around to where I really thought they made sense to be in the finance world. This is only my second DMV budget, but I have many years of experience doing other state government budgeting. So for example, one of the big changes last year is all of our license plates were allocated under printing. And I dug into the printing budget a little bit more because I was shocked at the line item and how much DMV actually spends on printing. And I've broken that out. So I've continued to make some adjustments. The forms, we now have a forms line item, so we can, actually know what we're doing with these printing costs. We're doing forms, are we doing stationery? And stationery would consist of the envelopes that get sent, the prepaid envelope or the pre-addressed envelopes that get sent with a registration. So really just diving in and breaking things out to be, to provide more clarity, really. The big changes this year is in our operating expenses, there were some personal services contracts that were embedded in there that we were paying. The largest one being Valid, who's our vendor that prints our credentials, our licenses. And that was also under one of the printing categories. And I've reallocated that and moved it to the contractual and third-party services line item where I feel that it belongs. So you'll see at the very bottom that operations, it looks like we have a $900,000 reduction in operation costs that's really been shifted to personal services. And again, this makes it really easy for a reporting perspective to say, okay, who are our contractors? There's queries that I can run, but when things are embedded into printing and procurement, fulfillment line items, it's really hard to tease those out without spending a lot of time and doing that manually. So this year, I feel like I hate to say completed that work because I feel like it's always a work in progress, but I feel like for the most part, we have completed that reallocation work. So next year, we should have some uniformity in these line items. Again, we're seeing our ups in the other purchase services. That was actually a down of 763, but it's also an up because it does include some other increases, the postage increases reflected here. The banking services we spoke about, you'll see that, gosh, I need to get better glasses, I'm sorry. the banking services, I think, is in the other
Terry?
purchase services as well. Yes.
Hi, I just would like to say to the committee, you know, this is the detail that's on the previous slide. And, you know, with the funds that Terry has categorized properly, you see some shift, but we've also worked really hard on looking at savings as we built this budget. So you do see some down in, you know, equipment. But when I'm using the mouse on the lower half, the operating expenses, you'll see where we are projecting our increased bank fees. We have on property management, we have some small increases that are assigned to our lease spaces. And with COVID, we're doing additional cleaning. We also, you see that there is the fee for space charges and our CDL motorcycle programs. And then, you know, there's an increase in forms and envelopes, but we are doing more mailing. And I think that's a reflection in there. You know, so overall, the big increases are the two areas that Terry identified on the previous slide. Otherwise, in our operating, it's just really day-to-day business and the dollars moving around and categorizing properly.
Yes. Well said. Thank you.
Okay. Questions, comments? All right. Go ahead.
This is the end of our presentation on the budget.
All right. No,
And, you know, I think back to, just to summarize, it's a 1.6 million increase, or 4.7 from last year. And the largest increase is in our personal services. What it costs for us for our staff and doing business. And there is request for some new funds to do the customer service enhancements. We are seeing, you know, and Terry made the point, this is making the portal more available to Vermonters, and it makes it more convenient. It's not changing our backroom operations yet. But it is successful. We are seeing the data and the numbers, and it was in our overview of online services just increasing, and people figuring out that there is an alternative to do business with us. And it's been positive. And I just want to say to the committee too, our scheduling system that we put in place for our customers to make their appointments around the state and to come in, the feedback from the customers has just been phenomenal. You know, you can walk into the DMV, and if you arrive on time for your appointment, you are going to be served typically in less than 10 minutes. You are in and out, and there's no waiting, there's no hanging out in the lobby, and it's just a very positive environment.
hear that, Jim, Honey, that's a busy office, and boy, people are in and out of there, and
Yeah,
they love it. I haven't received one complaint.
yeah.
Thanks.
So thank you for supporting that initiative.
Okay, anything else?
Yeah.
No.
Can I, Senator Mazza, can I ask a question?
Sure, go right ahead, Senator Ingalls.
Commissioner, the support that you guys are doing as far as on the online, on the back end, that's making that run so smooth, would it be better at the end of the day to upgrade that system so that you wouldn't have to have that support in the back? Does those numbers work? Or it's just as efficient as far as cost wise to have the people on the back end to make that work smoothly?
So we have spent the last few years with your committee talking about a replacement of a core system. It is an IT investment at DMV that will at some time, it needs to occur. When we have the opportunity to modernize that system, it will create a different type of back room. And really what will happen, and the simplest way to explain is that every transaction that comes in our staff will only have to touch it once. Right now, when a transaction takes place at the counter or online, it goes through the processing, which means 5 different units or 5 different people are touching these documents, because that's how the current system is. With the opportunity investing in the core system and the modernization of DMV, those individuals will be able to be trained differently where they process a whole transaction, because we'll have the system to support that type of workforce. I hope that answered your question.
Very well. Thank you.
Oh, Senator Ingalls, there is a long history on the DMV, as Senator Mazza knows. The project to do what you're talking about, to modernize, ended up in a failure. And the state got some money. This is back when Commissioner Ide was there for reimbursement and for the problem with the system. So it's amazing, these legacy systems that everybody talks about so much, but they are the ones that keep chugging along.
I don't know how we was crashing years ago and it's still
Yeah.
going. I can't, and they're doing more work on it. I don't know what your secret is over there, but you must have some secret.
That was my question, Chair Mazza,
Oh, yes.
because we talked about the last couple of years too, about how this old mainframe computer is going to die. And
Oh, yeah. This
there
was
was a
talked about
risk.
years ago. Yeah.
But I wondered, Commissioner Manoli, if that was brought up with the federal money and talking about good use of one-time money. Like, do you guys no longer feel it's at risk of failing at any moment, or it's just that the cost is so high and the work is so high and you're already, still digging out from COVID that you just didn't want to take it on this year? But I thought maybe that would be a good use of federal one-time money.
So
It might be on the list. It's 53 million set aside for IT.
Yeah.
Right. I didn't know. I couldn't remember how big it was. It's 53 million is the estimate.
So it's 50, the estimate is 53 million, and that would touch every book of business that we do. So there's, first of all, I think, Mike Smith and I keep talking about this. It is an old legacy system, and we have an individual that can repair. It does go down. What you're losing as a state is the efficiencies. We can't build out on these systems. What we have is what we have. So the system really drives how we do production and how we move information through, and everything is coded. So it restricts opportunities and data and opportunities for DMV to be much more advanced and to be one-stop shopping. And I do, just if you give me a moment, if we have the system in place and we make this investment, when you go to the counter to do your transaction for the car that you purchased, and you paid cash for it, with this system, you would leave with every one of your documents. It might take us 10 minutes longer, but you'd leave with your title, you'd leave with your license plate, you'd leave with your registrations. There would be, because once the data's entered into the system, everything will be produced. And you don't have to go 5 people touching all of those documents and getting temporaries. So and the money is collected right then and there, and the data is available. That's the vision. It also ties in and is specific with our financial system, because we have a POS system, and then we have vision, and everything ties in. And then in our FAST system that we have for the commercial vehicle, we have to categorize funds all of the time and move dollars to the appropriate places. And it's inefficient. And, there's a
You think the labor department had trouble when they had theirs crash? If motor vehicle ever crashes, we all want to hide.
Yeah. So I do want to answer your other question. So I have provided to the secretary information on the system to be evaluated and considered for the federal request, the additional that is coming through. And And I have also, as you are aware, and Senator Kitchell, I think, just brought that up, we are proposing, the administration is proposing a special fund for IT, which, you know, it's similar to a capital funding mechanism. And a portion of the DMV modernization project is in part of that estimate. And I would, you know, be more than happy if you want, as Secretary Quinn works through with energy and technology, to have a discussion with the committee on what we envision there.
Okay, we're gonna move on because we've got some other things, but we may get back to you for other information. I'm sure that was overview this morning. Great job, and
Thank you.
good job, Terry and
Thank you.
Wanda and Mike. Okay, can't forget Mike. Okay. All right. Okay, committee. Would you want to continue going, or you want to take a break, or because we'll have to cancel some of the things. We got a couple other items on here. Liz, how much longer we have on these other items?
We just have one left, which is the roadway paving and traffic programs budget.
Okay.
And that's with Rob White, Jesse Devlin, and Kevin Marcia. It's
Does the committee want to
11:15.
continue on and wrap up a little earlier so they got a chance for lunch, or?
It's up to
Yeah.
you all.
Okay, let's
So
do
keep
it.
going,
Yes.
no break. Okay. And you understand, Senator, about did you get a note about Senator Ballant?
Yes, I did. I got it. Thank
Okay,
you.
so
Take
you're all
care.
set.
Yep.
Okay. All right, so continue. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I'm going to kick off real quickly, but I'm going to hand it right over to Jesse so he can dive right into the budget. But for the record, Rob White, Project Delivery Bureau Director at VTrans. And Jesse, I'll hand it over to you.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to share my screen, and we'll kick off every Zoom meeting like I'm sure you do with the question, can you see my screen and can you hear me?
Yes.
That's in yes.
Okay. Great. So I know I talked with you guys a little bit last week, but again, my name is Jesse Devlin, and I am the program manager of the Highway Safety and Design section at the Agency of Transportation. So it's good to see those of you I do know. And for those of you who don't know me, I've been with the agency about 18 years now and have spent most of my career as an engineer or project manager or program manager on roadway and intersection improvement projects. So as program manager, I have 3 design groups that I oversee, and these include pavement design, roadway design, and traffic design. So these groups differ primarily in the types of projects that they design and bring to construction. So today, my goal is to really provide you with an overview of each of the 3 programs, describe to you the types of projects and improvements that are delivered through each program and with this budget, and also highlight some sample projects from each program, as well as provide a high-level overview of the 10G reports associated with each of the 3 programs. So seeing that the roadway program was listed first on the agenda, if there are no objections, I think I'll start the discussion with that program. So our roadway design team is responsible for the development of plans, specifications, and estimates that really cover a wide range of project scopes and that serve to address safety, mobility, and asset condition. So this type of work directly contributes to meeting our mission, which is to provide for the safe and efficient movement of people and goods. So our roadway design team is comprised of 10 individuals, and this includes project managers, engineers, and technicians. So in addition to the development of the actual projects that you see being built, the team really has a great deal of responsibility, which includes management of project budgets, providing excellent customer service, ensuring design quality, and delivering projects that are on schedule. So looking at 2020, calendar year 2020, our roadway design team advertised 11 projects for construction. 83% were advertised within 30 days of our targeted advertisement date. So our group continues to strive to meet our performance goal associated with meeting advertisement dates, because this really, it ensures that the appropriate treatments are being applied at the right time And there's also clear understanding and expectations from towns, the general public, and industry for when specific projects will be under construction. So I know that we have 2 committee members who are new this year, and I thought it would be worthwhile to provide you with some relevant photo examples taken over the last couple of years so that you can really visualize the types of projects that are designed and delivered through the roadway program. So as I noted a couple slides ago, there's a wide range of project scopes that are worked on within this program. I try to generally classify them into 3 general categories: reconstruction projects, culvert replacement or rehabilitation, and slope or ledge stabilization. So the slide I have up now is depicting reconstruction projects. So these are often the most complex jobs that we produce and are really, they're the projects that have the most impact and typically the most cost.
Is that Waterbury, Jesse?
Yep. So the first 2 photos, the left and middle are of Waterbury Main Street, and the photo on the right is of Cabot Danville US Route 2.
I should know this, but what are in those white tubes? Is that sewer, data? Is that gas? All the above?
Yep. So let's go through the photos real quick. So the photo on the left, I included this one. It's essentially trench work for drainage or sewer water.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I included it because it does a great job of illustrating some of the challenges with this type of work. You can see this is right adjacent to both the traveling public, pedestrians, as well as businesses. And, it just kind of illustrates that those constraints that we're always working with within these jobs. The middle project, that's actually utility conduit. So this is Waterbury Main Street. And I included this because, this is actually a good example of the type of work that's included with this job that's not a visual component of the final product. But when you look at this picture, you can kind of really visualize the fact that this is a big challenge both during design and construction. And it's one of those pieces that really contributes to, project cost and complexity. And the photo on the right, again, that's Cabot Danville US Route 2 reconstruction. This was widening and reconstruction. And I thought this does a good example of illustrating the space that's really required with this type of work, to dig down and replace everything. So these types of jobs, again, they're the reconstruction jobs, and they typically result in a complete overhaul of the road. These aren't kind of fixing one asset or, focusing on one area. These are full rebuilds of the existing infrastructure.
Appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
So the second category that I noted was culvert replacement or rehabilitation. And as you're aware, we have many culverts beneath our roadway network. These are typically similar to kind of that utility conversation. These are the things that are kind of out of sight, and they're not really recognized by the traveling public until there's an issue. So when culverts fail, it has the possibility to both place the roadway embankment as well as the traveled way at risk. So within the roadway program, we work to identify these higher risk locations and deliver projects that will either rehabilitate or replace an existing culvert. So the photo on the left on this screen is depicting a rehabilitation. And that's kind of a fancy word, but it's a way that kind of keeps what is there in the ground and works to fix that. So the picture is actually showing what's called a ultraviolet cured liner. So this is actually an insert that is placed into the existing culvert, and it's actually hardened but using UV light so that it forms a new culvert on the inside of the existing failing culvert. The photo on the right depicts a situation where we actually replaced a failing culvert and installed a box culvert so that it was appropriately sized for the amount of water that it would see and the environmental conditions that surround it.
A little different. Years ago, they dug a hole, threw a pipe in, and covered it.
And there still are some of those. Those are nice when we do encounter those. But
wow, there's a lot of money now.
The environment we work in now,
That's a little different.
A lot of what we installed 40 years ago it's not appropriately sized.
No,
There's
you're right.
been development and changes, and
Yep.
we're adapting to that. So the third category I noted is slope or ledge stabilization projects. So these are asset level projects, and they're not glamorous. They're not the ones where you see the brand new road at the end of a project, but these are important projects in that they identify the highest risk locations and mitigate the risk associated with material either falling into the roadway or material moving so that it destabilizes a roadway embankment. So there's really a lot of different types of treatments that could be classified under this category. And these include things such as hand scaling of rock or machine scaling of rock, blasting, and different types of anchoring and reinforcing methods. And you can see from these photos, it sounds easy as well to say we're going to remove some rock, but these are pretty significant projects that, really cut back slopes and, are right adjacent to traffic as well. So now let's take a look at an example project that had construction funding under the fiscal year 21 budget. So up on the screen, I have the Pittsford Segment 1 project, which is full depth reconstruction of about 1.4 miles of US Route 7 in Pittsford. So again, this project is considered a reconstruction job, and it's a major effort that includes the complete overhaul of the roadway. It has new drainage and stormwater improvements, geometric improvements, as well as the construction of 2 bridges. So the construction cost for this project is $10.6 million. It's under construction and it's anticipated to be completed this fall. So the photo shown on this screen is actually the pre-construction condition, and it illustrates the narrow shoulders and kind of the winding nature of Route 7. So the photos on this screen are actually the under construction photos of the same project. And I chose this project as a good example to share with you because it really does contain many of the elements that are a focus of the roadway program, kind of rolled up into one project. So this slide displays photos from construction. It depicts the roadway widening and the traffic management kind of on the left. It displays slope stabilization in the photo on the right, and then bridge or culvert construction in the photo on the right. So it really illustrates the complex nature of these types of projects. So hopefully we have a pretty good understanding of what types of projects are produced through the roadway group and within the roadway program. So looking at fiscal year 2022, our appropriation for the roadway program is $37.3 million. And this is a decrease of 4.7 million compared to last fiscal year. So this appropriation does include 3 million of anticipated COVID relief funding, and that's anticipated for some small culvert replacement work. So the $37.3 million.
Okay, could I
Yes,
just confirm that 3 million of COVID relief is that newest slug of federal money that comes out of, is that surface transportation bucket, or could you just, which of the transportation components of funding this is coming from?
Correct. So this is the 50 million that we were just provided for.
All right, the surface
100%.
transportation block grant.
Yes. So this is the 100% federally funded relief. And there's a portion of that is going to anticipated to be spent under the roadway program, and another portion that you'll see in future slides. And
I don't think we have Lenny on, but what would really be helpful is on one sheet if the agency would put together the proposed uses of the of that federal funding that is coming down in the latest bill.
We asked that the other day. They're going to come back to us with a breakdown of exactly how they're going to spend that 50.
Okay, all right. Sorry, I must have
That's
missed
all right.
that.
No, that was the plan last week, and they're putting it together for us. If I'm correct. Is
Okay.
that correct, Jesse?
I will double check, but
Yeah,
it's certainly something we can pull together. And
I got last week when I asked them. Yeah,
yeah, I have it in my notes and I'll follow up on that.
thank you.
Jesse, this is Kevin. Yes, yes, Senator, that is the plan to provide
That's
that
what I
to you.
thought. Okay, yeah.
All right, thank you. I was sure. It's hard to keep everything straight.
49 million is going to Chittenden County and 1 million is going to the Caledonia.
Don't forget
Well-
Essex Orleans.
Oh, Essex Orleans. I'm sorry. We're going to have
Yeah,
half a million
there
each.
we go.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Mazza.
Nothing for Washington County. It goes right by you.
Well,
Andy.
wait a minute. Washington County's got quite a bit there. They're getting that passenger train thing that's coming up. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so this budget funds really three primary project phases. It funds preliminary engineering, and this includes the design efforts or activities on a project. It funds the right-of-way, which includes the acquisition of property or easements that's needed to build the project. And it also funds the actual construction of the job. So this budget will fund construction of 26 projects, and it'll fund the preliminary engineering or right-of-way acquisition on an additional 45 projects. So breaking that down, this includes 23 roadway or intersection reconstruction jobs, 8 of which will have fiscal year 22 construction funding. It includes 22 small culvert projects, 10 of which would have fiscal year 22 construction. And it includes 20 ledge removal or slope stabilization projects, 6 of which will have fiscal year 22 construction funding. Also on this list, we have 6 miscellaneous projects, and these are projects that don't cleanly fit into one of the other categories yet. So there are things that could be planning studies that are in the early stages where, full scope may not be defined at this time. So to highlight a significant project that will be under construction in fiscal year 22, I've included the intersection of US Route 2 and Industrial Ave in Williston. And this project is a project that it'll improve safety and mobility for all users. It's going to include roadway widening for turn lanes, sidewalk construction, bus pull-off, as well as utility relocation. So the construction cost for this project is about $7.5 million. And the project was advertised this last fall and we anticipate construction starting up this spring and finishing up in calendar year 2023.
That's what Senator Chittenden promised everybody in Chittenden County. So
So I got elected, so I'm really glad to
that's
see
how I
it.
got elected right here. There it is. There it is.
Right. Champion for road race, huh?
Right.
That is a busy intersection. I'll tell you that. Wow.
It
Oh my God.
certainly is. It's going to be a welcomed improvement. It's
I
one of
bet.
those projects too that we've had on under development for quite a long time, and it's going to be great to kind of see the improvements on the ground.
Yeah.
So I won't spend a lot of time on the next 3 slides because I understand you've kind of got the introduction on the 10G reports via previous testimony from others. But I will introduce you to them and explain kind of how they are carried within our programs. So on the screen now, we have the 10G1 report. This serves to summarize projects that have been added to the program since the fiscal year 21 budget. So the list shown on the screen and in your budget books includes the project name. I've included the project type as well as the route. So as you'll see, it's a good mix of asset projects that primarily include culvert replacement or slope stabilization projects. And there are a couple of roadway widening or reconstruction jobs included in that list as well.
They're all up in Newport and Troy and all those up there in Northeast Kingdom.
Yeah, you'll see a lot of
Keep bringing them. Keep bringing them. We need them.
A lot of these are actually kind of the permanent repairs associated with some storm damage we had this past year. So it's going to be, the district's done a great job in stabilizing those, but these will be more permanent repairs. So the 10G2 report is displayed on this screen. And again, this summarizes projects that have either increased by 8 million or have more than doubled their estimate when compared to the fiscal 21 program. So within the roadway group, we have 4 projects that are included on this list. So these are primarily asset level projects. And, the past budgets have included the initial or programming level estimates. So as design has begun and the treatments are better defined, the estimates now reflect the current scope as well as the work that will be constructed. So my final slide associated with roadway is the 10G3 report. Again, this summarizes projects that were funded in fiscal year 21 and are no longer funded in fiscal year 22. So these are really the projects that were completed this past year.
So Jesse, finally, the Brandon segment of Route 7 is completed.
This is the village setting, segment 6. So
Okay.
if you remember, there's actually 6 segments along that corridor.
No, I didn't bother remembering because Peg Flory always did it for us.
Right. This is downtown. This was a downtown, right? In the city.
Downtown Brandon.
That was I gotta see that someday. They say that came out real nice.
It did. Yeah.
So we still have more segments then.
Correct. So this corridor was split into 6 individual projects. Segment 5 and segment 6. So Brandon is segment 6. Those are now complete. Segment 1 was what I actually just illustrated. So that one's under construction now. And kind of how we have these kind of sequenced is we're not trying to overlap work. So it'll be kind of a rolling application of treatments. So as a segment ends is when the next one would start. The next 2 segments, segment 3 and 4, are both in the right-of-way phase currently. So that was my final slide associated with the roadway program. I can pause for questions or move directly into paving.
Questions, or we'll go right into paving and wrap it up.
Okay. So moving on to the paving program, I'll first note that there's a lot of similar slides to what you just saw. So I'll move through it a bit quickly, as I understand I am right before lunch as well. So.
Yeah, and we have a noon meeting or 12:15.
Right, yeah.
Okay, I'll move very fast then.
Okay.
So the pavement design team, again, responsible for the development of plans, specifications, and estimates. The types of projects that this team works on is really focused on improving or preserving the roadway surface condition. So this in turn also addresses safety, mobility, and asset condition. So our pavement design team, we have 7 individuals on the team, consisting of project managers, engineers, and technicians. Again, in addition to the development of projects, we have the additional responsibilities of fiscal constraint, customer service, quality, and maintaining schedule. So in calendar year 2020, our pavement design team advertised 23 projects for construction, 92% of which were advertised within that 30-day targeted advertisement date. Again, we strive to hit those dates to ensure kind of an expectation and an understanding with towns, general public, and industry. So, as I noted previously, the projects delivered through the paving program, they do have a primary focus on preserving and improving the roadway surface. So there's a range of pavement treatments that are utilized in order to preserve the network. So I'll quickly run through the most common treatments that we utilize, and I'll work from the least complex towards the most complex. So the first family of treatments shown on this slide is our leveling treatments. So in the simplest form, this really includes the placement of a lift of pavement on top of the existing surface. You can see kind of the cost differential here. So the district leveling is typically our state funded leveling program, which is our most basic treatment in terms of both scope and the the requirements associated with testing and control. And the federal leveling is in the $200,000 to $300,000 per mile, which utilizes a similar treatment, but federal funds. The second treatment shown on this slide is preventative maintenance. And this application, this treatment really includes an application of emulsion or the tacky coat directly before a very thin overlay of pavement is applied. And you can see the cost for this is about $150,000 to $250,000 per mile. But this is a treatment that is not applicable for all situations. This is what we use to help preserve. It's a lower cost investment that helps to preserve roads that are in pretty good shape and get additional years out of the structure that is already out there. The next treatment shown is what we refer to as a level and overlay. So this treatment consists of a thin application of pavement that serves to level the road. And this helps to minimize roadway deformities and potholes and provide a solid surface, which is then followed up with a 1.5-inch lift of pavement. This is a cost at about $300,000 to $400,000 per mile. The second treatment shown on this slide is what is referred to as a mill and fill treatment. It's very similar to a level and overlay in terms of the amount of pavement that's being applied, with the one exception being the first step for this treatment is actually the removal of a depth of pavement. And that's what's referred to as the cold plane 2 inches. So that's actually removing a depth of pavement. And this is done in situations where there may be excessive cracking of the existing road, or there's an area where we are not actually able to raise the elevation of the roadway. So you'll see the breakdown in costs between the state system and the Class 1 town highways. You'll see it's significantly more expensive to work in the Class 1 environment. And this is primarily attributed to the environment that you would be working in. So on a Class 1 town highway, this typically includes working in or around utility or drainage structures. It includes that urban or village environment, which contribute to the higher costs. The final treatment I will highlight is what we refer to as a reclaim. And again, this is what I would classify as our most complex treatment. It includes cold planing or the removal of a portion of the existing pavement, and then reclaiming. And that's kind of not a well-known term, but in kind of breaking it down, it's almost like rototilling the existing surface. And that's followed up by applying new lifts of pavement. So this type of treatment differs from the other treatments in that it actually rehabilitates the layer below the pavement so that there's a consistent and strong base that you can apply the new pavement to. So obviously, again, being the most complex, and you can kind of hear it as I talk, it has the most steps in the process. It is a more costly treatment. So how do we define a project scope or treatment? So VTrans collects updated network level pavement data. The condition of the roadway is then rated based on rutting and cracking and roughness. And this information is utilized, both considering the budget as well as traffic volumes on the road to identify both the projects and the general treatment types that serve to improve the condition of the network as a whole. So I will say that, in my time in this position and with the agency, paving projects, they really have gone through a transition. And it's not just paving anymore. And they now include elements or features that, really improve other assets as well. So while the projects, thinking about that scale of projects, the projects on the less complex scale, the leveling, the preventative maintenance type projects, these really are still focused on paving. But as we kind of move up that range of treatments to the more complex jobs, such as the mill and fills and the reclaims, they're turning into a lot more of a corridor improvement type project. And they often contain features such as bike ped improvements, culvert replacements, shoulder widening, guardrail improvements, the installation of centerline rumble stripes, as well as geometric improvements. So taking a look at some example projects that had construction funding under the fiscal year 21 project. Up on the screen, I have the Stowe Morristown project, which is a 7.7 mile reclaim on Vermont Route 100 between Stowe and Morristown. So in addition to improving the roadway surface, work has included culvert replacement, centerline rumble stripe installation, and the realignment of Randolph Road to make safety improvements. So the construction cost for this job is $11.8 million. It's ongoing and it's anticipated to be completed this summer. So I included the photo on the left because I thought this was a good representation of a reclaim and really helps kind of visualize what is happening. And as you can see, it's work that does get down below the pavement. And it shows how these projects really work to rehabilitate what's underneath the subbase to ensure that the pavement will last. Second project I'll highlight is the Class 1 Town Highway paving project on Vermont 4A in West Rutland. So this project was just under 2 miles and consisted of a mill and fill treatment. The project cost just over $2 million and was completed this past fall. I use this as a good project example as it does a good job of showing some of the features that are considered and often implemented within our projects, including bike lanes with green paint, bike lane buffers, crosswalks, and pedestrian features. So we now have a general understanding of kind of the pavement treatments that are utilized within the program. And, looking at fiscal year 22, we have an appropriation of $120.5 million, which is an increase of $14.7 million compared to the fiscal year 21 budget. So similar to roadway, and as we discussed, this does include just under $17 million of COVID relief funding. Again, the overall budget funds 3 primary project phases. It funds the design phase, the right-of-way phase, as well as construction. So looking at what this actually will fund in terms of projects, it will have 43 paving projects as well as 2 crack sealing projects, and will fund the preliminary engineering or right-of-way on an additional 22 projects. So this funding level, it is increased from the past fiscal year, and it's going to result in a pretty robust paving program that'll result in just under 240 miles being paved in calendar year 2021. So this is a pretty significant increase over the last several years where we've been in the range of 150 to 200 miles paved per calendar year. So to highlight a significant project that'll be under construction in fiscal year 22, I've included the 12.6 mile reclaim on Vermont Route 9 between Wilmington and Brattleboro. So in addition to improving the roadway surface, this is going to include shoulder widening, slope stabilization, centerline rumble stripe installation, as well as the installation of pedestrian and bike features. So the photo on this slide is a screenshot of the existing condition. And while it doesn't necessarily do a great job of depicting the current pavement condition, it does do a good job of showing the narrow shoulders, the confined terrain, as well as kind of the winding nature of this roadway. So this project has an anticipated construction cost of $26.9 million, and the project is scheduled to be advertised for construction this spring, with construction occurring this year and next. So again, rolling into the 10G reports, 10G 1, which are again the new projects to this budget. I've included the project name as well as the route. 10G2 report, again, serves to summarize projects that have increased by more than 8 million or have more than doubled their estimate compared to the fiscal 21 program. So within paving, there are 6 projects on this list. So again, the primary justification for these increases are, again, the initial estimates or the programming level estimates were really underestimated. And as design began and the scope was fully refined, the estimates have also been updated to reflect that. I will highlight 2 projects on this list as they are more significant increases. The first is Richford J, which is a reclaim project that's currently under construction on Vermont Route 105. So the estimate contained in the previous budget was directly prior to a plan and estimate submittal within our project development process. So this new estimate, it fully refined the pavement treatment, and it also included the estimated work, which for a railroad highway crossing, as well as ledge remediation. The second project is the Wilmington Brattleboro job, which I just kind of talked about the complexities. So this is in a similar boat to Richford J, and was a project that had a estimate submittal shortly after budget development that fully reflected the application of a reclaim across the entire 12.6 mile corridor. Final slide for the paving program is again the 10G3 report, which summarizes the projects that have been completed and are no longer funded in the proposed budget. So again, these are a list of projects that have been completed along with project name. Route is included as well. So
Okay.
Senator Mazza, that's my final slide for
All right.
paving.
Perfect timing. Any
I
other
do have-
questions, Senator Ingalls?
Jesse, this is just a plug for the town of Derby. It's more of a health issue for Representative Brian Smith. If we don't get something done on Route 111, I just don't think he's going to make it. So I would really appreciate if Secretary Flynn is very well aware of it. And I'm just concerned for Representative Brian Smith's health more than I am anything. So
Tell him to chill out.
No, I understand, and I do know that has been brought up by Representative Smith, and
That's all right. Just
is
don't worry about it. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Before we,
So Senator Mazza, there is one more program that I could run through pretty quickly. We have the traffic and safety program.
Well, the committee's got to, we've only got about 10, 15 minutes before we go on another meeting. So I think we better skip that one right now and have it another time, if you don't mind. Because the caucus is going to start in just 15 minutes. So.
Yeah, and then committee starts at 1 and I have to
Right.
be.
So, yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Jesse. Good job. And we will reconvene committee or the caucus at 12:15. Do we use the same numbers, Jane, or anybody know the same numbers?
We just got sent an email, so check your email. It came from Cal.
Nobody, you got them right there, have you?
Do I?
Yeah?
No.
I thought we use the same numbers every week. We don't use
Yeah,
it.
right,
You should
right.
go
it's
off
the same
YouTube
one.
if you're gonna say the number.
Okay, all right.
Oh,
Shut us down, Liz.
If someone sends them to me, I will call Senator Mazza.
Okay,
You send
thank
them
you.
to me right away and
All right.
I'll give them to him right away.
Thank
So
you.
after we go offline, could I just, Senator Mazza, would you just stay on, please?
Yep.
Let me take this off YouTube.